Hey guys, it's East with Journey to Programming. A few weeks ago, or maybe just a week ago, I mentioned that basically every developer out there really needs to know how to work with version control. And if you haven't had exposure to version control systems before, what I'm talking about are systems like Git or Subversion or Perforce. They're all designed to help you retain your source code, save versions, and be able to save your basically your intellectual property from being potentially lost or overwritten. And it may not seem like a big deal right now, especially if you're working on a smaller project or you're the only developer on a project. But as you begin to scale your projects up, or as you begin to work with a larger team, it becomes a bigger deal to have your source code cleaned up and put into a repository system and backed up in that way, because as multiple people get their hands in the source code base, sometimes bugs are introduced when you're introducing new features. When you get to a version 2 or 3 of that piece of software, you want to have basically another source code snapshot that you can go back to and reference if ever something does occur that's bad that you don't catch in your white box testing, and it's not caught until it's already deployed in the field and it turns out to be a crucial error. Or if ever there's a loss of code in general, you can always have a benefit of having a backup. So one of the most common version control systems out there is Git. And Git is kind of used almost everywhere. I don't know if there's a company out there that doesn't use Git in one form or the other. I know a lot of larger companies and game studios. I mentioned game studios because I've worked on video games in some way, shape, or form for the past few years. Most of them use Perforce nowadays, and even Perforce themselves, it behaves a little bit differently than Git naturally, but it has support for Git within it too. So it's actually really interesting the way version controls evolved over time. But what I really want to focus on is Git. And most of you guys are probably saying, "What am I talking? What's Issa talking about?" He's mentioning Git, but you've maybe heard of GitHub or maybe BitBucket, which is also a version control system that runs on Git. And then there's also GitLab, and there's other websites out there and cloud infrastructure that's designed to help you set up a repository directory online or be able to back up your systems. But all of these that are running with Git are running on basically what is a platform or a subset of basically file directory version control logic that is Git. So when you hear people talk about using GitHub or GitLab, they're all built on Git. If you know how to use it, you'll be able to use any of those vendors' tools. And when I mention vendors, GitHub is a vendor. That is a company that provides Git as a cloud-based service where you can use Git, the platform or framework, to back up your software for your projects using GitHub's platform, which is an online service. So I'll pull up my Chrome browser here in just a minute. So if we pull up GitHub, what you're going to see is they're a really nice website, and you're going to notice that it is a platform. Now, they do provide a free service for small companies, and I believe they also provide, it looks like they have educational licenses and nonprofit licenses, which are probably discounted or free. But what this vendor does is they provide a platform with all the cloud space for you to store your project data. And that's awesome. It's great because you get to basically take your projects, whether you're a corporation, a small business, a game company, and offsite it in a secure server, which is managed by GitHub's team. You don't have to have your own DevOps team that's managing the entire system. Larger enterprises or tech companies may want to consider maybe hosting their own Git servers at some point, but GitHub will do that for you, and you could just pay whatever their license or per sheet cost is. But what I remember GitHub used to charge is for small companies or small teams, you usually got a free account. And I want to say that's still the case. So what I was going to do is let's take a look at these pricing plans here. and see what the current deal is. I don't personally use GitHub, although I have used it a little bit in the past, or I've also taught people how to use Git through GitHub before, or through using GitHub servers. But I personally use GitLab. I'll show you guys that in a minute. But let's take a look here. So we're comparing the plans. What you can see right away is, let's see, we've got a free plan, which, okay, it's unlimited private and public repositories. That's good. So I remember for a long time, I don't think they gave you private repositories for free. So that's new to me for GitHub. That's awesome. That's probably to be able to meet the competition out there, because companies like GitLab, which is a completely free platform, although they have paid services as well, has been offering free private repositories and public repositories for years. So this must be something they did to compete. I think BitBucket does it as well. But let's continue looking around. So let's see. Code reviews and pull requests, you have to have those enabled for everything. So your free plan and the step up from free for $7 a month, both included. That's not too bad, $7 a month. But let's see. Let's focus on the free plan. Draft pull request protected branches are only available for free users in the public repository. So I don't necessarily like that. For anybody that's actually going to be administering this and kind of taking over the DevOps role, where you're going to be managing the actual servers and making sure the repositories are going to be properly kind of administered, then you want to be able to protect your branches accordingly. Code owners. So I don't know exactly what they're implying by code owners. Let's take a look at this. So you can use a code owners file to define individuals or teams that are responsible for code in a repository. Admin or owner. The people you choose. Okay. So that's interesting. It looks like what they let you do here is define who the primary, let's call them the admins or the moderator, the primary owners slash moderators, authors of the code bases or are. And then you could probably have sub kind of roles assigned to other people that can just contribute to the branches or to the primary master repository. And this is another thing I'm not a fan of this only being available to their public repositories. This is a free feature. Actually, I think all of these are already for free available in GitLab. So I'll show you guys that again in a minute. Let's see if anything else in here kind of throws up a flag. So let's see. Public repositories only receive pages and wikis, repository insights. Repository insights, I guess if you really want to know overarching data, that may be nice. I don't know if GitHub does it differently from others, but GitLab provides basically everything here too. Team discussions may be like an in-Git chat type system. I am surprised that's not provided, because being able to comment back and forth is usually pretty standard. Anyways, I'm going to move on. Let's see, security and user management, organization and team management, role-based access control, two-factor. Okay, so that's pretty interesting. You cannot force two-factor auth to be required for your Git repositories if you're in free or pro. You also don't get role-based access control, which is what I'm fairly certain GitLab does provide. And it looks like there's a few other things. Again, that's not a huge deal. If you're just starting out and you want to put together, put your source code on a version control system, and you don't want to run your own local version control system by installing Git and getting a server running, which the only reason you would do that is if you want to be able to access your source code from other computers. You can actually just install Git and create local repositories on your local computer, and that works too. If you're just building on one computer, you do have the risk of that computer being your bottleneck or your fail point and not having a backup of all your source code and work. But that's not a huge, okay, for small teams or individuals that haven't had their computer die on them, that does suck if it happens. So I recommend you back it up on some sort of server. Making your own is great. But anyways, again, GitHub's great. A lot of people I know use it. A lot of enterprise companies use it as well. I'm going to show you guys actually GitLab right now. But before I do, let's see. What are they giving nonprofits? So nonprofits, do you get an advantage? Okay, so it looks like nonprofits can get their entire organization on it for free. That's pretty cool. And then I did see there that there's something for, okay, academic institutions, which we're looking at now. So education, students, etc. For students, let's see what you guys get. Oh, I am a student, so I would get this too. Cool. If you guys don't know, I'm currently in my master's degree for computer science. I do it part-time through the online Master's of Science with Georgia Tech. So OMSCS program. It's pretty awesome. If you guys haven't checked it out and you're looking to do your master's in CS, definitely consider it. It's a great program, especially for the price. The professors are top-notch, and the content they're covering is amazing, and the lectures are very well done. So there's a plug for OMSCS at Georgia Tech. So let's take a look. Students, you get, I don't know what best developer tools means, but we'll see in just a minute. Level up your community with leadership training. Okay, so you get some kind of training benefit. Let's just take a look at this. What am I doing? Let's go ahead and take a look. Let's see. Get the best developer tools. Looks like you get some continuous integration tools. Ooh, some DigitalOcean server. Probably like maybe some basic server allocations. You can throw up a droplet. So if you don't know what DigitalOcean is, they're basically like a web host. They offer cloud servers that are running on solid states, which almost everybody is right now. AWS Educate. That sounds like AWS's learning platform. So if you haven't worked with Amazon Web Services before, that may be advantageous. Heroku. That's a pretty big one if you're doing anything with web applications, I believe. And if you want to learn it, maybe they're giving you an actual license or something. Let's take a look. Wow, they're actually giving you a lot. Ooh, you get a free for everyone Atom, which is kind of a nice text editor. I don't know what Algolia is. Hosted search API, front end and back end framework. Awesome. I'm not huge on it. Bootstrap Studio. Is this just some sort of editor just for Bootstrap? I didn't know that existed. I've used Bootstrap a handful of times, and I still do, and I didn't know there was an editor for it. Whoop. If you guys don't know, I don't do web development frequently. I do it when I need to, and mostly I focus on the back end. Cardo, is this? Nope. This, to me, sounds like some kind of e-commerce plugin, like a WooCommerce or a Shopify. Cardo, so spatial analysis, visualization, and application creation. It's a whole smorgasbord of basically capabilities. Awesome. Datadog, more cloud-based infrastructure monitoring. Okay. A lot of the platforms provide some sort of monitoring service already, so I don't know how advantageous this would be unless you're trying to learn how to scale your DevOps for a very large type business, or maybe you're going into a company that specializes in providing DevOps services to development companies or companies that provide like SaaS services, and they want to scale up quickly. That may be advantageous and make your life easier than using like the AWS monitoring tools or the DigitalOcean monitoring tools, which are also available. It looks like there's a whole bunch of cool stuff. Git Kraken. So if you guys haven't, again, worked with any kind of Git repository, there are a lot of ways to be able to interact with Git. You can either use a Git CLI, like a command line interface, or you can actually use a visual Git editor, basically a visual Git interface. So not Braintree, Source Tree. I actually have it installed on this computer. Is a common one that's made by Atlassian. Git Kraken's a big one. It looks like you actually get some sort of license version here. That's pretty cool if you're a student, so I may take advantage of that at some point. It looks like you can also, I think everybody gets GitHub Desktop. I think this is free anyways. Oh, it does say free for everyone. I'm just blind. So a lot of these are actually free for everyone. Okay, Atom is free for everyone. What was the one? There's a text editor that's frequently used. I just forgot which one it was, and it actually does cost a couple $100 to get a license. Anyways, I'm a Notepad++ fan. I've definitely played around with Atom a few times, and I like brackets, and nowadays I'm using VS Code. So to each their own. JetBrains, if you haven't done a lot of Python, then JetBrains is a Python kind of IDE, and it's pretty powerful. I like it. I've used it a handful of times. They offer like exactly what's written there, PyCharm. So that's a great one to use. Azure is the AWS for Microsoft. Google Cloud Services is the AWS for Google. So just so you know, it looks like they're providing a lot of cool stuff. So if you guys don't know or don't have access to this, it may be useful to you. Oh, hi, puppy. Here's my dog, Darth Vader, if you guys haven't met him yet. He sometimes barks in our background and makes a lot of noise. He's being a ham right now, though. All right, so let's continue on. I told you guys we'd look at GitLab. Let's take a look at GitLab really quickly. So I've used GitLab for probably about 5 or 6 years. I've got a lot of source code for my personal projects, for my business projects under EdgeTech. And then I also have a lot which I've taught. So when I was teaching at the Art Institutes, I taught a lot of my students how to use Git through GitLab. That was after I had begun teaching them in GitHub, but I tried to advise them against it because I really thought being able to keep your repositories private at the time is very advantageous. Additionally, you have a lot more control, or you had a lot more control in here. I think you still do based on what we just saw, but let's take a look here. So GitLab, they always have a free account. Their second to cheapest, or their cheapest account other than free, is $4 instead of GitHub's. Let's see, GitHub's was what, $7? Let's just take a look and compare the prices. GitHub, you guys are getting killed right now. So the Pro account, which is their cheapest actual paid account, is $7 a month versus GitLab's $4 a month. Awesome. So let's take a look at what the big differences are here. I kind of do like this simplified tiered pricing page here. I think it just simplifies everything for me rather than the checkboxes work too. I don't know. I just feel like this is a little bit more easy on the eyes to see. So let's see. The free account offers community support, continuous integration, and development features, which those are a lot of fun, and well, not a lot of fun. They can be very useful depending on the type of projects you're doing. And a lot of the game projects that we do, we actually do not use these tools all the time, especially because we work with a lot of clients that aren't doing multiple version releases of the work we're doing. So if you're on the website, though, this is very advantageous. It helps a ton if you're going to be trying to integrate your updated features regularly and you guys want to have some sort of pipeline there. I think it's very advantageous, but it does take some configuration. Anyways, let's continue on. An issue board. I did not know that this was a thing right now. Let's take a look. So is this like a Kanban board that they have? Yeah, it looks exactly like that. So I think you guys may have saw that I use Asana. So here's my Asana board for some of the blogging stuff I do, and then some of the videos I'm making for you guys. And then I also have some business stuff and others in here. But it looks like GitLab has included that in the actual platform. That's pretty cool. Oh, they've got a little video here. Let's check it out for a few minutes, or for a few seconds. I won't kill you guys here.
Your idea might pass through design, development, to review. Whatever your workflow, the GitLab issue board helps you visualize the process, giving you instant visual representation of the current state of your project. Getting started couldn't be easier. Simply navigate to the Board tab to look at what's in your backlog and what's already been completed. By default, the backlog list is populated with any issues that haven't been resolved, while the done list is populated with issues you've marked as closed.
That may integrate directly into the board, and then you can assign things directly into that. That's actually a really cool feature. Asana can do basically all of that. Their free account has some limitations on being able to reference things into multiple lists and boards at the same same
can
time.
be used to create
So I may
columns or
actually take a look
lists
at this.
on the board.
I think you guys should too.
Any
If you guys are
issues with
using
this label
Trello
will
right now,
automatically be added to the
or
list for
Asana,
you.
this may be an interesting
To
one
place
to try
an issue
out.
into a newly
And
created list,
I wouldn't
drag and drop
necessarily
it into
adopt
a
it if
list
you
of your
guys have a
choice.
large team or if you
This
guys are
will
so set
automatically
in
apply a label to the
Asana or
issue
Trello
so
right
that
now
you
that
can
it's
still
not worth
take
making the
advantage of
change,
sorting
but it may be
issues
worth
by label
checking
in
out.
the Issues view.
Let's close that and take a look at the other features here. Okay, so chat ops. Is this the chatting feature that we just talked about? Provides a method to interact with continuous integration, development job through chat services like Slack. It kind of sounds similar, but it does sound okay. Here we go. Interesting. Huh. I think that's pretty cool for them to integrate this. This is definitely new. I have not been keeping up with what features they've been adding on or making available to us. So that's pretty awesome. I think that's kind of like one of those paid features that they have in GitHub, which is already included for free. So here's the beautiful checklist board that we saw on GitHub, but this is GitLab's version. So let's take a quick look to see what's not included with the GitLab version here, okay? So one thing that I do want to note, let's see, LFS, so large file support, is supported in the free account. I don't know if LFS was a thing in GitHub. I don't even see it in here. I believe they do support it. Git in general does. So I don't know what GitHub's current status is with using a large file server. And if you guys don't know this, which again, you guys are watching this and you're probably watching because you don't have a lot of Git exposure, Git is great for source code. And as your project begins to grow into a massive project, it can slow the repository down. Adding in assets like media files, images, etc., textures into your Git repository is usually not recommended. So what you end up trying to do is you try using a Git LTS, which is going to be a large file server, or what is it, LFS? Yes. Large file server. I said LTS. And that's how you would want to account for the media files. One of the great things about Perforce, which I mentioned earlier, is it's a very simple method, or it's a simple platform and repository or version control system, which allows any type of file structure to sit and live in the version control system. And what they do is they do a checkout system to ensure that people aren't writing over each other, and they keep everything synchronized between all the computers that are utilizing it. So it does have some advantages. It does also have some disadvantages in the case that your computer is not synchronized, which is always going to be an issue with any kind of version control system. Then you're still going to have issues there. But if your computer is synchronized, you will get a file lock on the files that you're looking to work on, and that will mean somebody else is working on it. And that could be any type of file. It could be Photoshop files, PSDs. It could be video files. It could be Premiere files. It could be any type of file type in there. And then also remember, Perforce does offer, I think, in their current platform, the ability to have Git repositories within them. So that's also something cool to think about. I think smaller teams, unless you're really a large project and a large team, I don't think it's worth going to Perforce necessarily. Getting some exposure there is great, and they do have a free account for, I think, teams that are smaller than 5 or 5 or smaller people with them or in them. But I don't think Perforce is the best way to go initially if you're trying to learn how to use version control. I think jumping into Git is very, very good. A lot of companies use it, and they expect you to know how. When you learn Git, the skills and the way version control works, you'll be able to move over to Perforce and any other version control system anyways. Let's take a look here, though, because I keep ranting on other ideas or other thoughts. So let's see. Multiple issue assignees is not supported in the free version, but man, almost everything looks supported in bronze. Okay, so here's where the $4 version does not include stuff, but let's keep taking a look at these reds for free. So issue weights. So you can't put like a priority on the project issues. You can't assign issues to multiple people. And this sounds like it's all related to that Kanban board setup. So that's kind of interesting. Explicitly mark issues related and track their status. Okay. So basically issues that are dependent on one another. Exporting CSVs of the issue. Okay, so it looks like they're trying to monetize on the fact that they've put in a lot of effort into adding in this whole project management Kanban board type setup into their platform. That's really cool. I don't think that's a huge deal. I don't personally use that stuff. So I just need Git, and it looks like most of the Git functionality is in here. It looks like as we get into using webhooks for larger groups, it may be a problem. Push rules, reject new code commits that don't comply. Okay, so if you want to apply a company policy to all your pushes, this looks like this is where the limitation's going to come in. I don't think this will be a problem for any of you guys that are running a smaller team or a startup or maybe a small company that just wants to make sure they have all their source code backed up. But possibly as you actually do begin in-housing a DevOps role or team, this will begin to become a bigger issue. And as you guys begin to establish a policy for your company or for your development process, this or a protocol, and you guys want to apply rules like that, then that may become something which you consider. Let's see. But it's all available on the $4 plan. That's great. Okay. Some administration stuff. Merge approvals. Okay. Code owners. Okay, so this is similar to GitHub. I guess this is something I have not worked with before, and I'm surprised, but I guess I just haven't needed it. So that's kind of getting to where the end of the free reds go and the bronze support does come in. So $4 supports runs down basically through everything that GitHub is providing. And that makes sense. The $4 plan is supposed to probably compete with the GitHub $7 plan, so that makes sense. Now, I don't recommend one over the other. I think they're both great. If you guys are looking to learn Git, I think both of them are great options. I think GitHub probably provides a better tutorial series, and I think they actually have like a full web client version of a tutorial that you can actually learn in the browser. So let me take a look. GitHub Git tutorial, and this will basically simulate you guys learning how to use Git. So let me see if it's still around here. So you can already see there's a ton of support and documentation. That's great, but there was a good resource I remember. So let's see. Maybe it was just Learn Git. Code Academy, Learn Git, try github.io. I think that's what I just looked at. I know it's out there. I'll find it and I'll post it on here if I don't find it on this attempt. Let's see. It's not that one. I just clicked that. Okay, so here's one. It kind of looks similar. Let's take a look at what they're going to do. So this is all about branching. Branching is important, but I'll tell you guys right now, the most important things to learn when you're first starting out are the basic commands. You need to understand what Git is doing when you're actually adding and committing your commits to the repository. And as you begin to understand it, it makes sense. But the most common commands that you're going to need to know are, let's see, you need to know how to pull. You should probably know how to fetch. The fetch and pull work hand in hand. I believe fetch will pull basically a snapshot of the data or the changes that have been made last, and then it does not actually apply them to your local computer immediately. What it'll allow you to do is you do a fetch to, and to explain this correctly, your computer, your local computer, so like this that I'm working on here and talking to you guys on, is my local computer. So I have Git installed here, or I have a repository with Git as its repository system, its version control system, and that's connected to my version control project on GitLab, okay? So let me see if I could sign in here with one of my accounts. I'm sure I have it saved up. Okay. here you go. Here's some stuff that I've done a long time ago, or oh, it looks like this is all teaching stuff. So let's take a look. Coding for games. Here's basically a really, really light repository, only 4 commits in it. But this is the web client, okay? You can look here on the URL bar, and this is at GitLab's website. My name is here because that's the name of my account on here. And this is where the actual repository is stored on their cloud server. And this is the name of the repository, okay? On my local computer, I have a copy of this repository, and it says that it has a remote version on this website at that URL. Now, that can be also a URL on GitHub or on BitBucket, which is Atlassian's platform. Now, when I do a fetch, which we were just talking about, what fetch will do if I'm on this computer here at my office or in my home, what fetch will do is it's going to go up to GitLab, grab a copy of just the changes that have occurred. So if you take a look at the commits, let's see. So let's see, change color of the start screen background. This is probably not going to show any code. Let's see, a title and a button change. So here's a couple of scripts in here. So say I have submit this code from another computer. This was when I was teaching. So at the school I was teaching at, I wrote this code and I added it, and then I commit it and pushed it to the repository, which is a web-based client or the web server. Now I've come home and I want to add to this. So the first thing I can do is do a fetch. The fetch will grab this snapshot, which will then allow me to look and see, okay, this is a source code that's changed since the last time, but this gives me a moment before it integrates it with my local computer here in my home so that I can think and realize, okay, I have not done anything else since then that will be affected or cause a conflict. So the next step I can do in order to tell that the fetched information to actually apply to my local computer is I can actually do a pull. So 2 commands there, git fetch and git pull are 2 very important ones. They allow you to grab data from the server or from another remote client or server of your Git project, okay? Fetch, again, will grab the snapshot of the data. Pull will actually pull the data in. There are a couple of other little commands you could add on to them, but those are not things which you should be too shocked about yet or putting too much pressure or thought into at this moment. Just remember, git fetch, git pull. Next, to put data into your Git repository, to back it up and to properly put it on the server, you need to know 3 commands. So that's 3. You need to know git add, you need to know git commit, and you need to know git push. Okay? So those are very important commands. Add. Git add is the first command I mentioned. After you write some source code and you change data within a Git repository, you have to add that into Git and tell it, hey, these files are the ones I want to potentially commit up to the server. So that's step 1. You do a git add on the files you want to potentially add into your, actually not to the server, into the Git snapshot or the version control, okay? And let me go ahead and show you guys what I mean by that. Let's see if we can show you guys some stuff in this web client here. Let's go to this. I don't think this is going to let me do anything. Nope. I'm going to close that out. So let's go ahead and open up. I'm going to open up a Git command line here, and I'll show you guys what I'm talking about. So, like I mentioned, the first thing you're going to want to do after you create changes in a directory are you want to add those changes so that they can potentially be backed up and a snapshot can be taken and placed into the repository. Remember that repository exists on every system that owns that project, and the entire idea here is when you've copied that project and created a Git repository on your local computer, you can also synchronize that with the server on GitLab or GitHub or BitBucket by doing a git push after you commit your file. So let me show you again how that's going to work. So you guys are going to see the background switch here. Let me just get this going. Oh, let's switch you guys to my other display. There you go. So you should see this tiny window here. Let me see if I can zoom this thing in so you guys can read it. All right. And let me see if I could find the files I need. Let's see. So what I'm trying to do here is navigate over to one of my directories that is a repository. Let me try to find it. Here we go. All right. So let's expand this window and I'll show you guys what I'm talking about. So I'm going to type in ls here, which is going to list all the directories in here. And I'm going to move into one of these folders, which I know is actually a Git repository. So let me change to the one called Sandbox Staging. And let me take a look in here. Is this one a Git repository? No, I'm surprised. So let me take a look at one of my other ones. Let's see. CDR. Oh, let's change into the AR learning one. Nope, not a repository. I apologize, guys. One of these should be. Let's see. Oh, I'm not going to open up some client files. You know what? Let's just make a new repository. So I'm just going to make a new repository in here. So git init. What that does is initializes this entire directory to be a Git repository. That was stupid. So now my entire directory is a repository. You know what? That's fine for now. So what just happened is I made my entire directory, which is Edge Technovations local, a Git repository. And now if I type in git status, I should see that all of these are red. Want to know why? Because now Git is looking at this as a repository, and what it wants to see is a snapshot of everything that's currently in it. Currently, these folders with all the source code exist in here, but they're not commit to the repository as a snapshot. So Git works kind of in a snapshot fashion. What it does is each commit, which is a commitment to the repository, is a snapshot of the current state. That way, every time you change something, it becomes a snapshot which can then be diffed in comparison to the prior snapshot, so you can see what the differences are. All right. So right now, everything is red. That means that none of it, or all of the stuff has changes in it that probably need to be changed. There's some other nuances here that I've kind of skipped over, but I'm just going to talk to you guys about the commands. You can see here it's talking about doing an add already, which is great. What we're going to do is we're going to add maybe a specific folder, okay? So the add is I'm going to use AR learning, and I'm going to include the entire folder here. So what this is going to do, it's going to begin adding all of those into a state where they're ready to be potentially commit to the repository. So now if I hit git status again, AR learning should be green and the remainder should be red. All right, so here's all the files that existed within AR Learning. There's a whole bunch of files that should not be in there because I don't have a ignore file in here. But if I run it as git status -s, you guys can have a little bit of more of a shorthand version, which just gives me a quick A for it's added right now. And anything that's not added is a red question. What the heck do you want to do with it? Now, if I want to actually add this to my repository, we're talking about the next crucial command you need to learn. That is commit. So what you would end up doing is you do a git commit. If I enter it like this, it's going to go ahead and commit, and then it's going to ask me to add some sort of message. I like to add a shorthand directly in my commands. If you're using a visual editor, you can do this in the visual editor. It's a little bit more clean. I'm just going to say, let's see, committing the commit of the entire AR learning folder structure or folder contents. Okay, so now if I press enter, it's going to commit that to my repository here on my current computer, and that becomes a snapshot point on my computer. All right, so that is the power there. So in order to get a snapshot to be created in your repository, you would do a git add of the files that have been changed. That's number one. And then you would do a git commit of those files after they've been added. Okay, two of the most important commands you need to know. Next is a push. I'm actually not going to commit it for you guys because I'm going to end up deleting this anyways because I don't want this to be a repository. The next big command is going to be is push. So a git push will take the commits that have been made on this local computer and it will push them onto the remote server. So if this were a repository that were connected into my GitLab account, which I showed you guys back here, then what could happen is the changes I've made will be pushed up to this repository. Granted, I am up to date with that repository. That means we're synchronized to the most recent content and commits, and there's no conflicts in the commits or the changes that I'm pushing to that repository. Okay, there's a lot of information there. I'm not going to dig deep into it. What I'm going to say is remember these commands: git add, git commit. Those allow you to add the changed files so that they can potentially be committed to your repository. Next, a git push. That's the third command. A git push allows you to take and push that copy of your repository, the changes that have occurred, onto a remote system. Now, to get files, you need to remember the other two commands. Remember, there's a git fetch. I should just do it this way. 4. I can't do that, so 4. Git fetch and git pull. If you want to use pull, you can do that right away and you could skip a fetch. If it's your own repository, nobody else is working on it, you could just pull. You should know what your changes are. If you get into larger projects, you're going to want to do it a little bit more organized, and you may want to fetch first to make sure you didn't make a dumb mistake, which we all do. So you may want to use that git fetch. Remember, the fetch will get a snapshot of the files and the changes that have occurred, and the pull will integrate those into your repository that's local on that computer you're pulling to. All right. So that kind of covers the top 5 commands that you need to know. If you want to be introduced to Git and you're afraid of using the command line like I had open here, there are a lot of advantages to using the command line. I feel as though there's certain commands like rebasing that are harder to do when you are not using the command line. I think doing a rebase and cherry picking certain commits is a bit harder to do in a visual editor, but let me show you guys a visual editor here. So I'm going to close out my Git bash window there, and let me show you guys source tree, okay? So it opened up on my other monitor. This one may have some other projects in it. Yep, so this one has a professional project that I have a lot of work in. You can kind of take a look here. There's a ton of commits. I guess not a ton, but they date back to May of 2018. You can see there were a handful of other kind of branches here that got integrated together. And this is what the visual editors generally look like. Source tree is a big one. It is made by Atlassian, and they're the ones that make BitBucket. if you work for a large company, you may end up using BitBucket because they also have a lot of other software tools that we use in industry. Those can include Jira. If you guys are doing any kind of issue tracking and logging, Jira is huge. So that's all done by Atlassian. Confluence, which is a way to share documentation and resources and files between multiple people and also be able to write notes and communicate over it. So they offer a pretty cool software suite. It's a little bit clunky. I don't personally like it. I think there's an advantage to using some of the modern stuff out there, but it takes all of those tools and gives it to you as one if you use Atlassian's tool sets. SourceTree is free. It's made by them, and you can use it with any kind of Git repositories. You don't have to be using BitBucket or their platforms to use SourceTree, okay? If you don't want to use SourceTree, you could use GitKraken. There was a free link to that within GitHub's free accounts. Also, if you're looking for GitKraken anyways, I think GitKraken may be free. Let me take a look. I may be thinking of Git Tortoise. So let's see, GitKraken here. They do have a free version. That's awesome. And they have a really nice stylized version here. I mean, I like the dark theme, and just looking at this image, it looks like it may be kind of pretty. There are other visual editors, so if you want to get the CLI that you just saw me using, I just get that straight from Git for Windows, and it's just very straightforward. It's just a bash command line, so it actually does some of the Linux commands if you're used to doing that, or Unix. They also offer a GUI. I do not recommend this GUI. If you're going to use a GUI system, you can install this just so you get bash. I recommend either going with SourceTree, GitKraken, or I think Git Tortoise was the other one I've used. It's a little bit more simplified. It's not as pretty as SourceTree or GitKraken, but it's free and it works very well. It's been around for a long time. Let's see. What else am I missing here? Let me just show you really quickly what the actual visual editor looks like, okay? So the visual editor here is going to show you all of your commits. Each one of these lines you actually see here is a commitment to my repository. That commit could have happened on any one of the computers I worked on this project with, and that's at least 4 different computers that I've used in different states, different locations, etc. They're all this repository is all hosted on 2 cloud servers. Actually, we have one running on BitBucket and one running on GitLab as a backup. And this is a large project for a client of ours. We had multiple users working on this one as well. So one of the cool things about this is we have a short description of what the commit is. So if you remember, I told you the command git commit. When you commit a kind of a update to the repository or a snapshot, it always wants some sort of description or message to go with what that commitment is. And I usually just use the command line, so I do a -m to do a shorthand commit message in there, and I put it in there, and that could be anything from a long form commit where you actually would list bullet points of basically all the changes that have been made in there, which I kind of do sometimes, or it could just be a short one-liner. I always tell my developers to commit more often rather than less. When you make small changes, commit. That way you have a snapshot in case you get pulled into a meeting or somebody distracts you and you come back and that commit ended up breaking, or some source code change broke software and you never had a chance to actually test it. You have multiple snapshots, so you can go back over smaller snapshots. Later on, you can combine those commits into like a single commit by doing some of the more advanced features within Git. But you can worry about that at a later time. For now, commit more often than you think you need to. When you make small changes or little bug fixes, just commit it and leave a helpful message, okay? So you can see there's a handful of buttons. You have a pull button up here. You have a push, a fetch, some of the more advanced features, although you're going to get used to them pretty quickly once you start using it. Branching and merging, very common. Here on the side, you have lists of all the remote branches that exist. And the visual editor makes it pretty simple, okay? So for each commit, you can actually click on it. It says who made that commit, when it was made. It gives you the actual commit hash or the key for it. It gives you that short description here, and also in this description commit window, actually in the GUI down below. And then it actually shows you a little view of the changes that were made. So here's some source code changes that were made, and I get to take a look at the snapshot of that, which is pretty awesome, especially if you're trying to really quickly go through your commits and get an idea for what happened in it. Okay. So that was a ton of information. I hope it's useful for you guys. If you are not using Git yet and you're coming out of college, you should take a little bit of time to begin integrating it with what you're doing. First of all, you should be developing a portfolio. And one of the best ways to display your portfolio as a developer, web development as a web developer, a mobile developer, a game developer, a desktop developer that wants to go work with Microsoft or with DoD companies, one of the best ways to get your portfolio online and show the work that you've done so that companies can be impressed is to put it on a repository. A great way to do that is put it on a GitHub repository or get a GitLab repository and make those projects either public or make them private. And when you are ready to share them with specific companies, you can either give them specific access and show them how to access it, or show them how to log in under that account. They most likely won't do that. You're probably going to have to make it public, but you'll be able to show them that, yes, you do know how to use Git. Yes, you do work on projects on your own time, and this is the type of projects, or these are the type of projects that you've worked on. This is what your code looks like, and you have developed these skills, okay? They're not going to have to train you on that when you first enter, although they probably will train you on it a little bit when you first start, because every company usually has their own kind of protocols for how they have you use version control. When I first got my job at Lockheed Martin, they used Dimension CM, which is a version control system, and that kind of reminded me of Perforce, but it was a little bit different. It also used kind of a snapshot copy of everything like Git does, but they had a very specific way for the way they were using it. And that was my exposure to using version control for their setting. I had used Git before, and then after I left them, I went back to using Git in my next company. So Git is very, very strongly desired in industry. I still use it today in my company. All my developers that report to me use Git for all our repositories. And you should take some time out to learn it now rather than putting it off. And it's just another skill you could put on your resume. And also, you should have your portfolio and all your source code that you want companies to see on a Git repository. You should not just have it in a folder structure that you're sending all of it to them on. And so you shouldn't just dump it all to them. Especially if you want to be able to display source code. It's just so much cleaner if you show it to them in a repository system with snapshots and etc. Okay? That's my summary for Git. This took a long time. I hope you guys enjoy it, and I hope you guys learned something. If you have questions, please leave them in the comments down below. And if you have any feedback or any comments, again, down below is great. You can send them to me directly also through my email, which will be posted in the description. If you have not subscribed yet, please do. And hit that bell down there if you want notifications of when we push out new content. Have a good one, you guys.